Peach galettes are one of my all-time favorite summer desserts. They're made by combining butter with flour, sugar, salt, blended, rolled out, then topped with juicy, ripe peaches that are then tossed in more sugar and some cinnamon, then finally baked to perfection. Here's how I make this delicious summer treat. If you enjoy the video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you all so much. We want to start off with a half cup or 1 stick of high quality cold butter. Kerrygold is probably my favorite brand to use. While it's still chilled and firm, go ahead and cut the butter into several small pieces. This is going to help us out when we blend it. I'm going to be using a food processor here, but it's totally doable by hand. Combine 1/3 cup flour, 1 tablespoon of sugar, a half teaspoon salt, then we'll add in the small pieces of butter. Give that a few pulses, then we want to gradually add in about 6 tablespoons or so of cold water. So add a little bit, give it a few pulses, then add the rest, and then continue to pulse until the flour starts to clump. You don't want to overmix here, but you'll know when it's ready when the dough holds together when you pinch it. Go ahead and dump everything out onto the counter, and we're just going to corral all this dough like this, forming a loose circle. It doesn't need to be perfect at this point, and it's okay if it's a little shaggy looking. I'll use a bench scraper to flip this over and then gently press it together. I'll flip it back over and continue to apply light pressure until it's somewhat cohesive. We want to work somewhat quickly here as we don't want the pieces of butter to melt. That's what's going to give us a nice flaky crust. Go ahead and wrap your dough disc in Saran Wrap, and we're just going to let this chill in the fridge for at least an hour. The dough will last in the refrigerator for up to 3 days if you want to make this ahead of time. Alright, so my dough has been chilling for a couple of hours, and now it's time to roll this thing out. It's very important to place it on top of a piece of parchment paper before you start, otherwise it can be a little tricky to move it once it's flattened. And just begin to roll it out, applying a little pressure at first and then gradually applying more force. I like to roll from all different directions in order to achieve a nice even circle. Don't stress too much if it's not perfect. You can see mine is definitely not a perfect circle, but what's important here is that we roll this out to be around 12 inches. If the dough is too thick, then it won't bake properly, and if it's too thin, it's going to be hard to handle. So 12 inches is kind of that sweet spot. Go ahead and transfer the dough to a baking sheet. I'll make sure it's about the right size, and this looks good. I'll go ahead and place this back in the fridge while I prepare the peaches. I recommend using yellow peaches for this as opposed to white. Yellow peaches tend to be slightly more acidic, which helps to balance out the sweetness, and they're also sturdier than white. So they're going to hold up better when we bake it under high heat. I'll just use a paring knife to cut these down the middle, then thinly slice. I probably won't use all of these for this one galette, but if you're making a couple, or if you just want to save some to use in a day or so, you can always wrap these in plastic and store in the fridge. Once we have all of our slices, I'll add in a 1/4 cup of sugar, a half teaspoon cinnamon, 1 tablespoon of all-purpose flour, about 1 teaspoon of vanilla paste. You can also use extract. And lastly, I'm just going to add a little bit of lemon zest, just to give it some vibrant flavor. You can use a spoon or a spatula, but sometimes I find it's best just to go in hands first. Keep mixing until all the peaches are covered and they start to appear nice and gooey. I'll take my dough back out of the fridge. By the way, we did that in order to keep the butter intact. We want it to melt in the oven and not on the counter. I'm just going to arrange these in a circular pattern towards the center. Once again, it does not need to be perfect. Try not to overfill it like I sometimes do. Some folks like a greater ratio of dough to fruit, as I tend to lean the opposite way, but totally your call. Now we're just going to start folding this dough partially over the fruit. Again, this part is much easier when the dough is still firm. You'll want to pull the parchment over, then essentially peel back the dough, then lightly press it into place. I'll just do this to all sides. It's fine if your sides don't look perfectly even, mine certainly are not. I'll fix my sides a little bit just to make it a little bit more aesthetically symmetrical, and that should be good. Now we want to go ahead and whisk 1 egg for our egg wash. This is going to help the dough develop that nice, beautiful brown crust. Coat the sides of the galette with an even layer of wash. It doesn't need to be totally soaked, just a light layer will suffice. Other than helping the galette brown up, this is also going to allow the sugar that we're going to sprinkle on top better adhere to the dough. For the sugar, I'm using turbinado sugar. You can use just regular granulated sugar, but I tend to prefer a more textured, coarser topping. And here we are. Now I'm just going to stick this in the oven that's been preheated to 425 degrees Fahrenheit and let it bake for around 25 to 30 minutes until the top has turned a nice golden brown. And at last, our peach galette. The last thing I'll do is add a little bit of powdered sugar, like it needs more sugar. I'm not going to add much, just a light dusting. Kind of like if a snowman sneezed in our dessert, that's the amount that we're going for. Remember to let it cool for at least 10 minutes before slicing into it, and that's it. This is one of my all-time favorite summer desserts. Actually, who am I kidding? I make these all year round, even when peaches are not in season. As always, ingredients will be listed in the description. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and thank you all so much for watching.